Good evening, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, and just want to take some time to share some thoughts, perspectives, and insights with you for this Facebook Live. And just to update you on some things, this coming Saturday, I'll be in the city of Allen, Texas, for the Thin Blue Line ball to recognize and thank our law enforcement officers for their service, sacrifice, and commitment to us each and every day. They serve and they protect us. That's their motto, that's their standard. So we appreciate our law enforcement officers. And then Monday evening, I'll be out in Lubbock, Texas, with the True Texas Project, talk about constitutional conservatism here in Texas, give an update on where we are in our legislative session here in Texas, and also on our legislative priorities. Remember, the Republican Party of Texas has 8 legislative priorities, and they are election integrity, which we'll talk about some tonight. And then also after election integrity, monument protection. We have religious liberty and religious freedom. That's real important when you look at H.R. 5, the Equality Act. We have constitutional carry. And when you think about H.R. 8 and what President Biden and Vice President Harris discussed today, that's a real important issue. And then we talk about ending, one of our next legislative priorities is ending the murder of unborn children here in Texas. We want to end the gender modification surgeries here in Texas for our children. And we have school choice and ending taxpayer-funded lobbying. And also a plus one is that we want to curtail executive overreach here. And I think we saw a case in point of executive overreach today. But before I get into the topics of today to discuss and share with you, once again, the thoughts and prayers go out to the people down in Bryan, Texas, at the cabinet manufacturing facility where, once again, we had a deranged individual. And what we have to come to understand is people that want to do evil are going to do evil no matter what tool they use to do evil. Sadly, today, one person lost their lives, 5 others were wounded, to include the Texas public safety state trooper who was injured in tracking down the assailant, who is now in custody. So at least that is very important. And it was one of those disgruntled employee type of events. But let's talk about that, because without a doubt, already you see the people on the progressive socialist left saying, see, here we go. This is why we need to have this gun control. And that's why Joe Biden was standing up there with Kamala Harris today, and they were so correct. But let's go back and peel the onion on some of these recent shootings that we've seen, California, and then also Colorado especially, and then of course in Atlanta, Georgia, where again, you saw the person in Atlanta, Georgia was a deranged individual. The important thing we have to realize is that some of these places have some of the most stringent gun control laws, like in California, like in Colorado. As a matter of fact, Boulder, Colorado has extremely restrictive gun control laws there. And then that grocery store chain, which is part of the Kroger grocery store chain, they have a rule that no one is supposed to be able to carry a weapon, a firearm, into grocery stores. But guess what? People that are going to do bad, people that are going to do evil, people that are going to break the law don't care about the law. The law only applies to legal law individuals and citizens, and we see that once again break down. So I just think that we need to take a step back and understand that this is not about the tool. It is about the person. It's about the mental illness. And when you come back and you look at what happened in Boulder, Colorado, you're talking about a person that was on the FBI watch list. So how is it that a person on the FBI watch list was able to pass a background check, BATF form 4473? Every time I purchase a firearm, I have to do that background check, 4473. It's not how many times you've gone through. It's not whether or not you're in the database. Each time you purchase a firearm, guess what? You have to take that background check. So all of these people saying we need universal background checks. We need more background checks. Well, guess what? Somehow the database, the system is breaking down and it's failing. When you have someone that had a history of mental illness in a state that has red flag laws, that was one of the things that President Biden and Vice President Harris talked about today was national red flag laws. Well, I think we all know why they want national red flag laws, just the same as they want a national registry. They want to be able to come in and say, well, we checked out some of your Facebook posts. We checked out some of your activities. We checked out some of the places you went to speak or some of the rallies that you went to. And we're concerned. And we know that you have firearms. And so when you start talking about a national red flag law, when you start talking about what Joe Biden did today, completely unconstitutional. No elected official can, by executive order, usurp, undermine, take away one of your constitutional rights. The very second constitutional right that you have in your Bill of Rights, which is the right to keep and bear arms that, as the founding fathers wrote, shall not be infringed. And so what Joe Biden did today was try to infringe upon those rights by stepping up there and saying that he's going to do all of these things by executive order. He's going to say that, any lump of metal could be considered a weapon. So where does this go? You know, I remember once upon a time, HR 8, especially, really codifies this. But once upon a time, when my oldest daughter was doing her master's degree at Southern Methodist University, which is an open campus, and she had to do a lot of late night biological experimentation and lab work. Well, I gave her one of my 9 millimeters to make sure, a pistol, handgun, to make sure that she was protected. See, HR 8, which they passed in the United States House of Representatives, would make me a felon. 10 years in prison for doing one single thing, and that would be to make sure that my daughter was protected. And I think that's unconscionable that we will have a federal government that wants to say that I, as a dad, cannot even make sure that my own daughter is protected, that I need to send my daughter through a background check just because I loaned her a firearm for her to go and make sure she stays safe and she came back to our house and she returned it to me. Or how about if you know some woman that's a victim of domestic abuse and the former spouse is somewhere out there. Maybe they have a restraining order. But you know what? Bad people don't pay attention to orders and edicts and mandates and decrees and laws if they are violent people. So let's say you wanted to loan a firearm to this woman who had just undergone, domestic spousal abuse. Now you're a felon, 10 years in prison. That's how unconscionable these one-size-fit-all executive orders or edicts coming down from the federal government, when what we really know, the progressive socialist left wants to make sure that we're not able to protect and defend ourselves. What happened today in Bryan was tragic. But think about it this way. How about if someone in that manufacturing facility was a person that had their firearm on them? You see, that's why constitutional carry is kind of important. I think we're up to 21 different states have constitutional carry. Texas still does not have constitutional carry. That's why it's one of our legislative priorities for this 87th legislative session here in Texas. Because in the state of Texas, if you're a legal law-abiding citizen that passes the 4473 background check, why do you need a permit to have that firearm? That's your constitutional right. Do you have to have a permit to go to church? That whole freedom of religion, free exercise thereof thing. Do you have to have a permit for your freedom of speech? I might want to rephrase that since the left wants to change that to the freedom of acceptable speech. So we may have to have a permit one day to have free speech. How about freedom of expression, the right to assemble, the right to petition your government for redress of grievances? Do you have to have a permit for any of those First Amendment rights? Hey, you members of the press out there, do you have to have a permit so that you can be a member of the press? Other than going through and having your credentials to show that you belong to a certified news agency. But do you have to have a permit in order to have that freedom of the press? No. So why is it that we have to have a permit? Why do we continue to have this mother may I when it comes to having our Second Amendment right? When you talk about these red flag laws, which Joe Biden talked about today, that's a violation of your Fourth Amendment rights. How is it that someone's going to be able to just come into your home without a warrant? That's a case being heard before the Supreme Court, and confiscate your firearms, all because someone said that you're behaving suspiciously. I know that suicide is a very horrible thing, but all of a sudden, if someone goes out there and says that, that Allen West guy, I'm really concerned about his mental state because some of the things that he writes about, constitutional conservatism and all of these other things, I don't think he's very stable. And I know that he has firearms. I know that he's a board member of the National Rifle Association. So maybe you might want to go drop by and confiscate his firearms to make sure that he doesn't hurt himself or hurt someone else. Now, under this whole thing of red flag law, it's a complete violation of my Fourth Amendment rights. I lose my Second Amendment rights, and I don't even have the ability to know who my accuser is and to defend myself. That is a complete undermining of the sovereignty of the individual here in the United States of America. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness goes out the door. So what Joe Biden did today is just a continuation of that little mantra that Rahm Emanuel came up with when he said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And that's what we see happening. All of a sudden, those of us that are legal, law-abiding gun owners mean no one any harm. As a matter of fact, when I'm at work and my firearms are here in my gun closet, they don't harm themselves. The trigger doesn't all of a sudden, fire itself. It takes an interaction with an individual, a person, a human being. And then it gets into the psyche of that human being, the behavior of that human being, the intent of that human being. And this whole thing about banning assault weapons, anything can be an assault weapon because it's about the tool that you use to bring harm, assault against another individual. So are we going to start getting rid of knives? Because last week on Capitol Hill, a young man who was a follower of the Nation of Islam and Mr. Louis Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad and all of those, he was the one that rammed his car up there into a security barrier at the Capitol and charged and stabbed a Capitol police officer with a knife. Somehow I did not hear the people in the mainstream media talk about banning knives, nor did I really hear them talk about the person that was the assailant. It wasn't a white guy. And that just goes against the narrative. Just the same as out in Boulder, Colorado. Everyone was talking about the white guy that was only shot in the leg, that was being led away and treated by the police. Then we come to find out his country of origin, his ethnicity, the fact that he was on an FBI watch list. And somehow, and for some odd reason, they stopped talking about that in the mainstream media. Or how about the two black girls who just recently killed an Uber driver? And everyone, CNN, mainstream media, MSNBC, they really didn't talk about that. If it had been two white teenage girls that killed a black Uber driver, it would have been all kind of talk about racism, white supremacy, assault weapons. But when the shoe's on the other foot and it doesn't fit the narrative of the progressive socialist left, they just seem to kind of not talk about it. Now, right now, as I sit here chatting with you, I don't know who this individual was, the assailant, the person that was caught doing the chase in the Bryan, Texas shooting. But you can just bet there are people on the progressive socialist leftist side that are just praying, please let this fit our narrative so that we can use this as a political battering ram. But just remember this, as we go forward, what happens when the day comes when President Biden and Vice President Harris decide that we're going to do an executive order that takes away your freedom of religion? We're going to do an executive order that takes away your right to assemble. Unless you're Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Or we're going to do an executive order that takes away your freedom of expression. So basically what Joe Biden did today, and Kamala Harris, was as executives, make themselves constitutional monarchs and put out an order across the land, not through the legislative branch, not through a system of governance that we understand in our three branches of government, checks and balances, co-equal branches, all that stuff. They just decided that we don't like people having guns. And we're going to say that you can't. We're going to take away one of your fundamental rights. The founding fathers understood the lesson that they learned from April the 19th of 1775, that an armed individual is a citizen. An unarmed individual is a subject. And if we continue to go down the path of making people subjects, we will also make people victims. Because bad guys are going to find a way to get a firearm or to get a weapon or to get anything that will harm good people. Today was not a good day for our Constitution. Today was not a good day for our constitutional republic. But the great thing about our founding fathers, they understood that all the real power in these United States of America rested with our states. And that's why constitutional carry and constitutional nullification is so important. Hey, the state legislature up there in North Dakota already said they're not going to follow executive orders that come down from the Biden administration. So President Biden, I think that what you did today was waste a lot of oxygen, because we will not allow you to usurp and undermine our Second Amendment rights, which really does ensure and guarantee that you can't take away our First Amendment rights. And speaking of our rights, one of the great privileges that we have here in the United States of America, not a right, but a privilege, is to cast a vote. But when I sit around and I hear the narrative that is coming out of the progressive socialist left, the commercials that they're running, the rhetoric that they're using, to try to say that if you believe in election integrity, you're a white supremacist, you're a racist, you're taking people back to Jim Crow. Hey, let me tell you something. You're looking at a guy that was born in 1961 in a blacks-only hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm not too happy with the Major League Baseball either. But I don't believe in unconstitutional actions that undermine our electoral system and integrity. Now, someone out there in the progressive socialist left going to tell me that, Allen West is a black white supremacist. But then again, Joe Biden did say that if I didn't vote for him, I ain't black. So maybe I'm kind of up the creek without a paddle anyhow, according to the left. Because after all, they do define your skin color, or your skin color is supposed to define your ideological perspectives and your outlooks. But see, when you talk about not showing a voter ID in order to vote, that's part of HR 1. So, CEO of Delta, an American, are you just going to allow us to get on your airplanes without a picture ID? Because obviously you say that if you have in law that you need a picture ID in order to vote, that's racist. You make us have a picture ID in order to get on your airplanes. Ergo, I guess you're racist. Hey, Major League Baseball, you go to a will call box to pick up some tickets. You just don't allow someone to show up and say, hey, I'm here to pick up tickets. They got to show a picture ID. And it has to be matched to that name and the face in order to get those tickets. So I guess Major League Baseball, really, Mr. Commissioner, you're racist. And what's even worse, you moved the All-Star game out of my hometown, my city, Atlanta, Georgia, which was supposed to be a time to honor and remember the home run king, Hank Aaron, who I had the pleasure of meeting because I went a couple of years to school with his sons, Hank Jr. and Larry. But now you've moved the All-Star game from a city that is 51 to 53% majority black to a city that is 9% black. I mean, not a lot of African Americans out there in Colorado. And I guess if you extract the ones that are there stationed because of the military, it really does drop. And oh, by the way, the Colorado election laws, more stringent than those New Georgia voting laws. When you talk about not wanting to have voter registration roll review, just understand that today in Pennsylvania, they found 20,000 deceased individuals on the state voting rolls in Pennsylvania. You know, that battleground state where they mailed out 1.8 million of those universal ballots that just went down a voter registration roll that obviously had not been reviewed, and they got 2.5 million back in that battleground state. A state where, the courts, governors, Secretary of State. They did whatever they wanted to do with election law. So obviously, if I support unconstitutional actions when it relates to our election system, that makes me a white supremacist and a racist. That takes us back to Jim Crow. And oh, by the way, a little history lesson to all you leftists out there. Jim Crow was started by the Democrat Party. Jim Crow was implemented by the Democrat Party. Just like slavery, just like segregation, just like secession, just like lynchings, and all the other things that my parents and my grandparents had to deal with growing up down south. And yes, even me being born in a blacks-only hospital. So all of this fear mongering that you're trying to get people to back away from having election integrity, just remember, Democrats, that you're the party of voter intimidation. You're the party of voter fraud. You're the party of voter suppression, not Republicans. Republicans did everything possible to make sure that blacks could vote, that women could vote. And what did you do, Democrats? You created an organization called the Ku Klux Klan that kept the early black Republicans here in Texas, or attempted to, being able to go out and vote. So I don't understand why you're running these ads in Texas about trying to keep people from being able to vote. Because it's you guys, the party of the jackass. You guys are the ones that have always tried to keep people from voting. Now, you go back and talk about Civil Rights Act of 1964, Voting Rights Act of 1965. Well, that was already in place. Republicans did that with the 14th Amendment, and then later 15th Amendment. As a matter of fact, they got rid of the whole slavery thing with the 13th Amendment that not a single Democrat ever voted for. Go figure. And you want to talk about the filibuster and how you want to get rid of the filibuster? Maybe you want to check out history, Democrats, and realize and remember that the longest filibuster in U.S. Senate history were Democrat senators filibustering against the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed because of Senate Republicans led by Everett Dirksen. And don't give me this crap about party switching and whatever. Al Gore Sr., Al Gore's dad, he was a segregationist. Herman Talmadge, segregationist. Robert Ku Klux Klan Byrd, who Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden all praised, he was a grand poobah, grand wizard in the Klan. He stayed a Democrat. So that's the truth. And the great thing about everything that I'm saying right here, it'll be saved, it'll be archived. People can come back and listen to it and understand that you guys are just a bunch of liars. You're trying to intimidate people to not have strong election laws because as you are flooding more and more illegal immigrants into my home state of Texas, we know why. We know why you don't want to have the review of voter registration rolls. We know why you don't want to have picture ID for voting. Because all of these folks that are coming across the Rio Grande Valley to Texas, that you're pushing on internally into Dallas, into Midland, into San Antonio, and releasing out into our communities, somehow they're going to end up voting if you have your way. And that's why election integrity is the number one legislative priority for the Republican Party of Texas. And we're going to pass strong election integrity laws here in Texas. You can whine, you can froth at the mouth, you can throw yourself on the ground all you want, you can call us all the names in the dictionary, but you're not going to be able to steal elections anymore in the United States of America. We're going to keep our Second Amendment. We're not going to lose our First Amendment because you took away our Second Amendment. We're going to make sure that you can't just come busting into our homes like the Stasi or the Gestapo and start taking away the ability that we have to defend ourselves. And we're going to make sure that America will never have a one-party rule under progressive socialist Marxism, leftism, that you all embody, embrace, and are trying to rule over us with. So with that being said, what are your questions? Laurie Matthews agreed totally about constitutional carry. Laurie Matthews also, yes, we have to protect the Fourth Amendment because what they're trying to do is, red flag laws are a violation not just of your Second Amendment, but your Fourth Amendment. And remember, the Supreme Court is here in that case that law enforcement officers don't have to have a warrant to enter your house and confiscate your weapons. And understand this, when they confiscate your weapons, you don't know your accuser. You're told to show up at a court and you have to go through and get a lawyer and go through the court system to prove a negative and get your weapons back. We can't have red flag laws. So our states need to make sure those are enacted. Thank you, Heather Hill, for that vote of confidence. Robert Pointer, thank you very much, and we'll see where God leads me. Constitutional, Holly Williams, constitutional carry has to be passed here in Texas. Again, I mean, just last week you saw Iowa and Arkansas. Iowa signed it into law. Arkansas has signed constitutional nullification, also protections for the Second Amendment. And there was one other state that I read about today that has gone and passed constitutional carry. Heck, Utah. Think about this, folks. Bernie Sanders has constitutional carry. Yeah, the state of Vermont has constitutional carry. 21 states ahead of the state of Texas. We need to have constitutional carry here in the state of Texas. Now, let me debunk some of the false narratives out there about constitutional carry. What it says is that if you are here in the state of Texas, you don't need to have a permit. Once you pass a background check, 4473, that firearm is yours. You are able to carry that firearm. Now, if you want the reciprocity of being able to carry your firearm outside the state of Texas into another state, then you can go and get the permit that will be recognized by other states. And what is the odd thing here in Texas is that, you cannot open carry a handgun in Texas unless you have the concealed carry permit. But you can open carry a long gun without having a permit. It's kind of upside down, kind of crazy if you ask me. So we got to fix that. Terry Peterson, what can we do about all this is the question. Terry Peterson, the founding fathers left us a little thing called the 10th Amendment. And the founding fathers left us with this concept called constitutional nullification. And I'll continue to talk to people about the supremacy clause because everyone says whatever the federal government says, that's supreme over the states. There are two words in the supremacy clause that are very important. Those two words are pursuant thereof. If the federal government are doing things that aren't pursuant thereof to the Constitution, you can nullify it, which is what North Dakota and several other states have done, constitutional nullification. So Joe Biden's executive order, the legislature in North Dakota doesn't mean a hill of beans to them because it didn't go through the legislative process. So that's what we need, more states. Republicans control 62 of 99 state legislatures in the United States of America. That's incredible. That's power. So the power that states have, that's so important. And the more states that pass strong election integrity laws, they can try with H.R. 1 all they want. But states are the ones that have the reserved power to do election law. And counties are the places where elections are executed. So the federal government can't sit down and dictate and saying that you must have universal mail-in ballots. And oh, by the way, let me explain something. What universal mail-in ballots means is that they just blast out ballots based upon a voter registration roll that are not solicited. You don't know where those ballots are going. Absentee balloting is something different. It is a control system that we use, military especially, that people have to submit an application to receive an absentee ballot. Seniors can submit for an absentee ballot. Our military can submit for an absentee ballot. So one of the other things we need to do is narrowly define who is supposed to be receiving the absentee ballot. And that has nothing to do with keeping people from voting. Georgia has 17 days of early voting. Figure it out. If you can stand in line to go to a rock concert or a rap concert or baseball, basketball, football game, whatever, you can stand in line and vote. because there are men and women that are standing on freedom's ramparts to protect that privilege that you have. Okay, Tiffany Johnson makes too much sense with everything. Oh, okay. Yeah, the left does hate me because they're the real racists. You know, the left cannot stand a strong black conservative. It just destroys them. I know. I sometimes hear about some of the things that they say. And you know what, right now, everyone's trying to tie me to some group or whatever. Because why? They're trying to undermine who I am and what I stand for. Now, maybe Black Lives Matter will invite me to go speak at one of their rallies. Maybe Antifa will have me come and hang out with them and burn down some federal government buildings. I ain't going. But yet, constitutional conservatives are the extremists. And I'm really concerned about what's politicized. The next thing you know, you're going to have political officers in our military, like the old commissars that they had in the Soviet Union, because they're scrubbing the social media. They're looking for things that our military is doing. Don't politicize our military. General Austin, our current Secretary of Defense, sir, I remember you. I served with you at Fort Bragg when you were the 3rd Brigade of the 82nd Airborne Division Brigade Commander, the Panther Brigade. Sir, what happened to you? Did you forget your oath to the Constitution? All for political advancement? Because if you did, I'm disappointed. And we can't have that. Let's see. Mark Flanagan. Let's see what is going on. Mark Flanagan. Logic, unfortunately, has nothing to do with it. I wish it did. Look, we got to continue to talk about logic, common sense, and the Constitution. Because we're right. What is that Andrew Wilkow says? We're right, they're wrong, and that's the end of it. That's what I want you to do. Continue to go out there. Find those 5 people that don't think and believe as you do. And get 3 of them. Just continue to hammer. Continue to be relentless. Continue to talk about these issues. Understand that you have to be informed, educated before you can be activated. That's why if you go to the Republican Party of Texas website every Monday morning, I put out the chairman's Monday message. Whatever's in this little beady little head up here, I try to get it out to you all so that we're all on the same sheet of music. And now I want you to just have the courage to go out there and make a stand. The left is depending upon Republican elected officials to not have courage. They're dependent upon us to sit back and watch them flood our borders and not do anything. They're dependent upon us to just sit back and say, okay, we're going to follow your executive order that takes away our firearms and our freedoms. No. We have to dig in our heels. We cannot continue to, their constant pressure cannot be met with constant retreat. Their constant pressure has to be met with even more pressure. They're not going to like it. That's why they didn't like President Trump. That's why he was the model for going forward. We can talk about tweets, personality, whatever. I really don't care. I didn't elect someone that I wanted to hang out with or be liked. I wanted someone that would stand up to the left and lead our country and stand up to the enemies of the United States of America. You don't see that happening now. Let's see. Heather Hill, thank you. Heather Hill. Tiffany Johnson says, you might be my new favorite politician. I would never consider myself a politician. I spent 22 years in the United States military. I only spent 2 years as a congressman. I would say that I want to be a statesman. And the difference between a politician and a statesman is this, Tiffany. A statesman is going to tell you what you need to hear without caring about the consequences and ramifications. But a politician is going to tell you what they think you want to hear. They're going to run polls and all this type of stuff because the politician, well, they want to be liked. They just want to stay in that elected office. They'll sell out anything just to get your vote. I don't want to be a politician. I want to be a statesman. I want to be a leader. I want to be someone that honors the oath that I took to the Constitution of the United States of America, was sworn and defended against all enemies, foreign and domestic, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And that was an obligation that I took freely without any purpose of evasion or mental reservation. And so help me God. That's what I want to be. Lori Wheeler, well, great. Glad you're tuning in from Sacramento. Please recall Gavin Newsom. Michelle Orcutt, Biden's hero was Robert Byrd. Truth is truth. We need to stand tall. Wish we had better GOP promotion on truth. Yeah, absolutely. They all talked greatly about Robert Byrd. Gave him glowing remarks, obituaries. Hillary Clinton got the Margaret Sanger Award, and Margaret Sanger's bust sits in the Smithsonian. You know who Margaret Sanger was? She was a white supremacist. She was a racist. She referred to blacks as undesirables and weeds. She founded an organization called Planned Parenthood. And since 1973, Roe v. Wade, over 20 million black babies have been murdered in the womb. That was Margaret Sanger's dream. But you don't hear the left talking about it. That's a real white supremacist. Imagine if there was a Republican, that started an organization. Oh man, they'd be going crazy. So why isn't anyone out there counsel culturing Planned Parenthood? Founded by a real white supremacist and racist. That's why information and knowledge is powerful. There we go, Texas legislative priorities. Please, all you good constitutional conservatives and Republicans here in Texas, we only have, I think we got less than, coming up about 50 days of our legislative session. By the Texas Constitution, and here it is, Texas Constitution. It's right here on my desk. We have 140 days in a legislative session, and our legislative sessions are every other year. So we've already gotten down to the wire. We got to get our legislative priorities passed. And you can follow us with the Strategic Texas Activist Team. You see right there, and follow these bills. I came out against a couple of bills today, which really does punish our private businesses. They say that private businesses will have protections from frivolous lawsuits during a pandemic, as long as they follow the edicts and orders of the executive. That's not protection. You can't tell people to give up their essential liberties so that they can have protection from frivolous lawsuits. They should have protection, period. All right. Any other questions out there? It's almost 7:40, and I know you guys want to, turn me off so you can catch Tucker, or maybe you DVR'd it, or Grant Stinchfield, my good buddy over there on Newsmax TV. But I'm going to go ahead and close out and tell you it's a great honor to be the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas at a time such as this. This is a time we all have to stand up and fight. If we don't stand up and fight, we're going to get mowed down, rolled over, and we're going to lose the great state of Texas. We'll lose the great United States of America. We're right, they're wrong. That's just the bottom line. All you got to do is have the courage, the commitment, the resolve to stand up and fight back. And it's easy. And to stand up and also encourage Republicans in elected positions to gird themselves with courage. Because if we don't have strong election integrity laws, the left is going to find a gap. The left is going to find a way by which they can exploit us. We cannot allow that to happen. We must follow our Constitution. We must follow our rule of law. And understand this, that no quote-unquote shooting in Boulder or here in Bryan, Texas, that doesn't suspend the rule of law. That does not suspend your constitutional rights. A virus with a 99.96% recovery rate. By the way, did you read the article about those countries that use hydrochloroquine? They saw a 79% reduction in potential deaths. Think about that, what it would have meant for us here in the United States of America if we had not told people that they could not have access to that drug, that anti-malarial drug. See, no pandemic suspends the rule of law and the Constitution. But the left was very good last year. And never forget that it was April the 14th of last year when Eric Holder, who was the chairman of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee, he wrote that op-ed piece in Time magazine, the title of which was How Coronavirus Should Permanently Change Elections in America Forever. That's the essence of what happened in November 2020. That's the essence of what they're trying to do with H.R. 1. They're trying to codify into law unconstitutional actions in our electoral system. Can't allow it to happen. We will not allow it to happen. God bless you all. God bless the great state of Texas, and God bless these United States of America. Have a great night.